we have a number of people retiring in the county, from county government also. It's just that
31
time.
years and 9 months.
Yeah, the baby boomers are moving out.
And
I have to tell you,
20-some
it's
years.
overrated.
Oh, retirement?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years, you say, I have to look for a part-time job.
Well, I've only got one.
There you go, see, you're.
I've only got something going. I'm going to work at the history department at the Nevada State Museum, go back to the Nevada State Museum.
Oh,
Wow.
And I'm going to get to spend more time with my Nevada Civil War volunteers.
very good. Very good.
So you're going to be moving?
Yeah,
What are we gonna do about the Yukis?
I don't know. What do you want
I'll
to
be seeing you.
do? Yes!
Casey will be visiting. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Gibson Museum and Cultural Center's monthly Fireside Chats. We're very excited to have with us Barbara, who is going to talk with us. She's with the Forestry and she's going to talk about Native Americans in this area and archaeology and what has happened in her 30, how many years?
31 years,
31
plus.
31 plus years as an archaeologist for the U.S. Forest Service.
Well, all of it's government. That part's all government.
All government.
Yeah, some of it's BLM.
Oh, yes, gotcha. That's the other part of the government.
Yeah.
I'm Boris Brumfield, and I am the president of the Friends of the Gibson Museum and also the Lake County Historical Society. So we are thrilled that you have joined us for this fireside chat. Thanks. You're on, sweetheart.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. Or good afternoon, I apologize. It's been a week and a half. There are a variety of groups within the forest, and I'll be speaking mostly to the forest, which is, I've been here 21 years on the Mendocino. I came in 1994. To talk about the variety of groups here on the map, the outline of the forest, which is north of here. Here's Clear Lake. And Upper Lake is like right over here to give you kind of an area. And these are the variety of groups that are within the forest boundary. We have the Patwin, the Eastern Pomo, the Northeastern or Salt Pomo, the variety of Yuki groups, the Nomlaki, the Achnom, which is actually a cousin to the Yuki. They do speak the Ukayan language together. So they are related linguistically. But just to give you an idea of where people are in relation to the forest. And again, you know, here's Upper Lake. So Middletown's right down here, which is, so we don't discuss, we don't discuss the Wapo and the Lake Miwok that are here in the southern part because they are not, they don't have much to do with the forest. They are trading partners to people on the forest, and they do bring up the Napa and Annadel obsidians that we do find in parts of the forest. Here at Borax Lake, on the other side of the lake here, is the predominant obsidian source in the southern portion of the forest, and even into the northern portions at times, in the earlier times. Later, there's a disruption of collecting and trading, so that we're getting Medicine Lake Highlands, Grasshopper Flats, and even a little bit of Black Mountain from the Modoc area, Modoc Plateau, coming down into the northern portion of the forest. So obsidian is a very prized item for working, tool making, and ceremonial items. The predominant form of materials is chert, cryptocrystalline silicate. We are on the geological Franciscan Formation that goes down through most of California. And that is basically a chert formation. It raised from the ocean. We have a few fossils in it, but most of it is this cryptocrystalline. Some of it's very good to work, some of it's very poor to work, some of it has to be cooked or baked in ovens to make it. It changes the molecular structure enough to make it more pliable for working. It makes it a little more brittle, makes it easier to nap, or turning to tools. Knapping is that napping, and that's the tool making process. But most of it's churts, and that is the most dominant form because it's right here for everybody. The oral histories of the group would know where's the good stuff, where's the poor stuff. But you do have memories fade, and you'll have people opportunistically testing some outcrops here and there. Oops, garbage. Let everybody know it's not good. But, eventually somebody comes back and whacks it again, or founds a vein that is very good to work. And they'll come back and work it. You also have a variety of colors within the same gray vein and in the same area.
In general, what color is it?
They're all a variety of colors. They go from a red, brown, chocolate, pudding, red, to black.
Did they find any more value in any different colors, or was it just about the quality of the
It's more of the quality of the chert. Yes. Do ask questions as I go along, please.
How did they extract the chert? What?
Depends on the type of vein it is. Now we have a red chert vein on the east side of the forest, and it's in blocks. So they basically mine it. They have percussion and basically a chisel and a hammerstone, and they pull it out in slabs. Some of the other flows, they just figure out which veins are the good veins, and again they pull it out in that way, or it's on the ground. One of the better quarries that I have on my side also has cooking pits in it, so it has to be, it's broken and on the ground, and it's just scattered for over about 3 acres. So
You said that there had been a disrupt in trade.
yes.
Do we know what that was, or why that occurred?
Wars and white intrusion.
And so the Yuki and the Pomo were enemies, is what I heard. Is that true?
The Yuki didn't seem to get along with much of anybody, but they were here first because of the language and the age of the language. So one could hypothesize that they were probably down here closer to the lake and got pushed back. The word Yuki is actually a Nomwaki word for enemy. When a white man asks, who are they? They're the Yuki. And they're our enemies. We do have ethnographic reports of a war or a battle between the Nomwaki and the Yuki at telephone camp on the forest, which is right up in roughly this general vicinity. I'd have to stand in front of you to find it exactly, but up in that portion. So we have a detailed account of the battle that day.
But the Yuki call themselves Yuki as well?
No.
What do they call themselves?
Nomen, which is people of, and then it's the people of the bending firs, the people of down here's the people of the gravelly valleys, the people of, these are their names.
Very interesting.
And I'm sorry I don't speak enough Yuki to pronounce it correctly.
Forgiven.
And I don't want to insult anybody by trying to pronounce some of these names, but that's what they are. Nomen is the word people of. So it's the people of the areas, the northern areas, the Valley of Gravels, Gravelly Valley in the Lake Pillsbury Basin, and the other places. So that's their names for themselves. You know.
So is it insulting to call them Yuki?
No, because most of us can't pronounce these, and unfortunately, because of linguistics and of not learning, many of the Yuki don't speak Yuki. Many languages have faded, and they're trying to bring them back with grants from BIA and other agencies to bring back the languages from the tape recordings that were taken by the ethnographers in earlier times, to bring back the languages and to bring back some of the customs. The archaeologists are working with many of the groups to try to define boundaries of where they were, because these boundaries were fluid over time.
Yes.
Cottonwood Plate was one of our passport in time excavations, and we had Nomlaki and Yuki there because at the time, ethnographically, it was considered Yuki territory, but traditionally and in the oral histories of the Nomlaki, it had at one point been Nomlaki territory. So we had both groups represented there on our project so that both could give us their point of view, and if we should find funerary objects, we could ask both of them how to proceed, which of course is usually we put it back. We don't try, we have programmatic agreements by NAGPRA, Native American Grave and Repatriation Act. We go into these projects with a NAGPRA form already established and a protocol established. We don't want to find it. We don't want to disturb it. But if we do, how do we proceed? So that elders would be called and this would be stopped here and we would work elsewhere, and then we would proceed gently and put it back most of the time. But this is this. Here we have, moving along, later on, we have a 1928 and a 1917 maps of the forest as it changed over times. Of course, we were the California Reserve, which got a little confusing calling everything California. So we eventually became the Stony Ford Reserve, and then we became, in the 30s, we became the Mendocino National Forest. So these are things over time. Coming back to the Yuki, they begin tomorrow their Nome Cult Walk, which is the memory. Nome Cult Farm was the name of the reservation originally from the 1850s in Round Valley. And they, sorry about the itch. They were there, they started the farm with the idea of trying to protect the Native Americans from the whites. It didn't always work because a lot of the soldiers didn't agree with the protection of the natives. They agreed with the white farmers and ranchers, push these people out of the way. The land's good for farming, the land's good for grazing, we need it more than they do, unfortunately. By the 1860s, of course, we've got the Civil War. And we've got very few in the Army, military around. So, because the Native Americans have figured out there isn't a whole lot of Army around, they start fighting back. And you get the governor and things coming with an extermination policy for the Native Americans. Scalps are given prices, women, children, men. So the military rounds up the Indians. They've got the Nome Cult, the Nomlaki Reserve on the east side of the forest over here was abandoned. So they're pushing everybody up and over and into Round Valley to give them protection. Some of the Californian groups, they do want to protect. And if they put the Indians together, they will have enough of an army that they can protect. And so this is their thoughts on the matter. And so this is what they do. Of course, the Native Americans do not want to give up their traditional lands. Their hearts, their homes, their ancestors are here. But they're pushed into a corral in Chico, and they're pushed up across the valley and then up through the mountains. And we have the route. Basically now, we have a very good archival from the soldiers' diaries. And since things were named, if you look on this, you can see where they're named, and so we know what days they were where. They took more than a week to do it because they stopped several times for supplies. The wagons couldn't make it up over the mountains, so they had to pack, and then they had to wait for packs, animals to come to do supplies. They left a group of over 150 at one spot. They were just too ill, too tired to go on, so they pushed the rest, and the others would come later. 2 did escape, and several did die along the way. It was a very hard trip, and it's not even an easy route today. The roads are that, and right now we've got, from these major storms this winter, a lot of our roads aren't open for major vehicles. We are working on that, however. The forest is working on that and is getting these major roads repaired and worked on. We're applying for FEMA grants, and that, of course, that may now get put on hold with the hurricanes and things. But we have some monies and we have some grants already given so that we are working on the roads. But in those days, what was a deer trail became a hunting trail, became a wagon road, is often a car road today. And so that those roads are done. But we have the written journals of the soldiers. We have their documents. We have their reports back to the command of their description of the walk over and the walk back, yes.
Are those archives in the possession of the Mendocino National Forest?
Some of that stuff is, and some of it is in the National Archives.
Okay.
You can come up and check. Yeah.
Say it, please.
Yeah, very interesting reading. You can tell which officers and which men cared about the Native Americans and were not happy to be pushing them over these hills. You know, holy crud, did somebody think this out clearly? Surely there's a better route to go. And of course there really wasn't. Just an aside, there are minerals in the National Forest. However, because of roads and problems, it's never been economically feasible to go after them for the most part. Until you get a war. You get the borax in the borax area, Civil War, World War I. You do get other mining as we get wars and as those materials are needed, and it becomes more economical to go after them and transport them. But there are minerals and things. We do have a jadeite mine. We still have a jade mine up in the northern portion of the forest. We do have some prospecting and gold mining claims, but it's very limited, very small, because it is not economically viable in the forest. The transportation systems still aren't. Los Angeles freeways, to say the least. The schedule for this week reads, if I may, they start tomorrow from Buckhorn Campground in Orland. Then they go, they walk the Newland Cemetery. And then they go to Black Bear Campground. Then they go to Log Springs. Then to Wells Cabin. Then down to Eel River. They follow the river and the road. It would be Forest Highway 7. And then from Forest Highway 7, they'll stay at Eel River Campground, and then they'll proceed into the valley, and they have a lovely ceremonial dinner of salmon and venison for the people, for the walkers.
How many are expected to walk this year? Or what's the average?
It varies from year to year depending on ages and depending on the weather. It has cooled down a little bit. We'll probably get more walkers this year. We also have walkers that go in reverse, that have traditionally, the oral history is that they got off the reservation and got home. So some of them will get permits, and there's about 5 or 6 of them that will periodically walk the other way home.
There was a fire in the Orland area recently. Are these people in danger of fire?
I do not believe so. If they are, they've arranged to go elsewhere for the camping. But they did start in Chico. There was a corral at the stables in town, the coach stables in town, and that's where they congregated. Miwok, Maidu, some Pit River Nome Lockheed they picked up on the way and drove the people over. Almost 500 started out, about 200 got there. But and then we know that later some of them did come in, of the 150 that got left. They were just too weak, too tired. They were already ill-fed. And the water at Log Springs was not good. One of the ranches along the way, the water was not good and really hurt them terribly. The lieutenant talks about that. The water wasn't good and everybody was suffering.
How long does this walk take?
The walk takes about a week. They walk in a week. Well, they've got their support cars, they've got their support teams, and they camp the day ahead set up for them and start the meals and start the food so that the walkers, as they come in, have dinner. They're not waiting 4 days. At one point, they stopped for 4 days to wait. The wagons had to go back because they just couldn't make it and had to wait for a pack team and more supplies and dried beef for the Native Americans. So there were several stops. It took several weeks going over originally in the 1860s. But that was because of the logistics and stopping and waiting and letting people rest. And
How many miles is it?
it's over 100.
It's over 100.
I heard a presentation at Round Valley some years ago, and they wouldn't let me quote him because he was sending his doctoral study to an Ivy League college back east. But he indicated that the caloric count of the food that they were given once they arrived at Kovlo was about half of what the prisoners at Auschwitz were fed.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm wondering, were they not expecting that large a body of people to arrive? Were they not prepared? Were they just inhumane?
I don't think it was that much inhumanity, although they didn't care. But I think a lot of it was they weren't sure how many were coming. And two, because of the supplies and the supply routes, they just simply didn't get enough supplies. It's all a matter of the quartermaster and what they can get and the wagons. And if there aren't any roads, you don't get there from here.
Yeah.
And unless you do a pack string, and a pack string still can only carry so much.
So they weren't hunting and fishing along the way?
They weren't allowed weapons. All the weapons had been taken away.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to stand up in the morning with trying to get into a saddle and having an arrow in his dignity. So no, there was no hunting and fishing along the way. Now, once the escapees got away, they probably fashioned weapons and then began to forage for themselves. And
How many had escaped? I'm sorry.
two,
Two men? Do we know?
we do, I don't have that information. We could figure it out from the things, but I don't.
2 that were counted.
2 that were counted in the original disappeared in the night as they were keeping track of people. And then 3 had died along the route. And then the 150 that had stayed at the one camp. I believe it was Wells. No, it would have been Log Springs. I think it was at Log Springs they stayed over. Mountain House. 150 not able to travel, leaving them 4 weeks' provisions. Traveled 7 miles westerly up the mountains and encamped at Cedar Springs. Traveled from Cedar Springs to Log Springs. Grass is scarce, road from Mountain House steep and difficult to travel with wagons. There at Log Springs, they remained in camp, traveled. But anyway, they talk about up Tom's Creek and over, and that they had to leave the wagons and wait for pack. So there was a 4-day break there with the wagons returning and going back and getting a pack. The soldiers talk about at some of the steep spots. They got off their horses and put the old people or the sick or the children on their horses to get them up the road.
For the most part, the persons who participate in the walk, are they from the Mendocino area or they're from all over?
They're ancestry of the walkers, and that they are Native Americans from this area and from Round Valley. They go over and start the walk. One of the originators of that and worked most closely with the forest to start this in 1995 was Galen Asbill. He was a forester with the Mendocino National Forest, and he was our tribal liaison for the Covelo and Round Valley Confederated Tribes. Very dear man.
Wow.
Very, very dear man.
How wonderful.
So that's kind of my talk. I'll be glad to show and point things out on maps. Uh,
I have another question.
Yeah.
They're off the subject a bit.
Sure.
What about the sudden oak disease in your forest? There's big signs as you go.
We quarantine. We actually don't have any recorded in our forest, but we want to make sure you do not bring any wood in that has it to infest the forest. And the signs are you don't take it out just in case. So far, we don't have anything recorded within the forest, but we're trying to be careful because it is all around us. We do have it in Mendocino County. We don't have any in Lake County that I know of right now. I could stand to be corrected on that, but Sonoma County, Mendocino, up the coast, they have it. The idea is not to bring it into the forest and to be aware of it and to not take it out if you do find it. If you do find it, report it. You know, you got a funky looking oak tree over here and maybe somebody needs to go look at it.
Do you have any pine beetles?
Oh yeah.
I don't think anyone got
Oh yeah. The east side is worse than the west side.
Okay.
We have 4 beetles thinning and restoration project in the beginning phases of NEPA and archaeological investigations because that area is so heavily decimated with beetles.
Is there any predator on the beetles?
Weather usually. We haven't had enough cold winters, and so with the warm winters, the beetles just keep spreading and going.
So there's no mammal predator, bird predator?
No, it's not like we could put some boll weevils out there to get them. There is a couple of insects that we can sick the boll weevils on, and then the winter will kill the boll weevils to help us control things. Rather than use insecticides and herbicides, which with the marijuana problems is quite a problem for us. We need to be careful when we use it, not near water, not where, because it is coming into the water systems, some of these plants.
Are you still finding areas where people are illegally growing?
That was my question.
Oh yeah,
Is the forest filled with that problem?
not filled, but
Well, I mean, you know, on all areas of the forest, I should say, on all sides of the forest.
yeah, we have issues. Some years are worse than others. We've had a lot of the full core press drives in several years, so we pushed them off. They're emphasizing other places so that they are now sneaking back up onto the forest. So we do have to be careful there. Please don't come to the forest because you're afraid. But if the hair starts standing up on the back of your head, just walk out the way you came in and go someplace else.
Listen to your instincts.
Yes, very much so. Listen to your instincts. The forest.
Well, thank you. This has been magnificent.
Oh, thank
We
you.
certainly appreciate
Oh,
your
yes.
generosity of your time for the Gibson.
Yeah.
And what you have offered has been wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And I want to know where you got those shoes.
They are
Sat around
Did you get a
her
picture of
fire
the
at
shoes?
night and
We-
dried her.
No, I'm afraid not.
And we do have some refreshments in the office, so if you'd like to join us for refreshments, or if you are not currently a member or a supporter of the Gibson Museum through our Friends group, consider joining the Friends of the Gibson Museum as we continue to offer informative programs that let folks know historically what has happened in our area and also about the various cultures in our area. But thank you, Barbara,
Okay,
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.